Michelle looked like she was about to burst into tears any moment. Keith was lying in bed with an IV drip. He looked much better, which was a bit relieving.
Doctor, how's he doing? Is he going to be okay?
Michelle, clutching the hem of my jacket, looked up with concern. I spoke up on her behalf, addressing the doctor.
The doctor said he's overworked, probably pushed himself too hard. Lack of sleep, not eating right, gaming all night. I suppose.
The decision was to keep him overnight for observation. We both felt relieved that it wasn't more serious. The patient himself, Keith, was soundly asleep. I'll go grab some things, he'll need for the overnight stay. Thinking Michelle should stay by Keith's side, I made the offer.
Could you? Thank you so much.
To reassure Michelle, I grinned and said, leave it to me. Seeing that, Michelle's face softened a little. That's when it happened. Suddenly, the treatment room door was flung open. The loud bang startled everyone inside, including the nurses. Keefe, always causing trouble, entering with a loud shout was Dr. Johnson in a white coat. He was Michelle and Keith's father. He was, without a doubt, my archenemy. He grabbed Keith's collar and started shaking him. The nurses rushed to intervene. This isn't how a doctor should behave towards a patient. A nurse trying to intervene got shoved to the ground. Dr. Johnson raising his hand to strike Keith and shouted, "Wake up!" Without thinking, I grabbed his arm. "Stay out of it!" The annoyed doctor started yelling at me. I had no intention of letting go. With all due respect, that doesn't look like a family matter to me. Keith is one of our best. I'd appreciate if you refrained from violence. Hearing that, Dr. Johnson looked at me. Immediately, his eyes widened and his mouth twisted in shock. It seemed that he finally recognized who I was. "You dared to deceive my daughter and now my precious son too. You uneducated piece of trash." The doctor's words ignited memories of my past anger, but I'm not the same person I was back then. I won't be shaken by such remarks. As the doctor and I locked eyes, Keith woke up.
Awake! In Mummersbury? The Jane! To God! And says too, is to you first of Marries? Was that I in the middle of a game? That your peer sparked is?
Struggling to grasp the situation, Keith's confusion was evident. I gently embraced him, explaining that he had collapsed and was brought to the hospital.
Hey Keith, get back home now. I can still get you into a decent medical school. You wouldn't go wrong if you just listened to me.
The doctor's harsh rebuke made Keith bite his lip, always being dictated and controlled like this. That's probably why he ran away. I thought, Keith's an adult now. He makes his own decisions. Your children have grown beyond your reach. I positioned myself between Keith and the doctors, shielding both Michelle and Keith. The doctor, face filled with anger, grabbed at my collar.
You seem a bold now. You can't hide that you quickly bailed out on my daughter with that payoff money.
Michelle gasped and said, "What? Then from behind me?"
That money was returned to you ages ago. I replied with a provocative smirk.
The Clancy doctor shouted, "You're lying."
The Dabbers, you familiar with Rick's company? They've been generously donating every year.
I brushed off the doctor's hand, presenting my business card once again. Trigmazing the company name. The doctor's confidence wavered.
I donated that money immediately. Why would I keep it? I always intended to come back for Michelle one day.
I spilled out the promise I'd held deep in my heart. The promise that always suppressed my feelings, deceiving even myself. But I can't do that anymore. My life has always been intertwined with Michelle's. Today, our unexpected reunion made those feelings come flooding back. I've been making donations to Johnson General Hospital under my company name. Initially, it was just to repay that payoff money. The continuous donations were because I couldn't let go of my connection with Michelle. Maybe I was testing my own resolve. For a private clinic, donations are a lifeline. Staring intently at my card, the doctor suddenly changed his demeanor.
If only you'd said so. I aspirations, my apologies for the misunderstanding. Us were always grateful for your support. Just Pied Ike. Grateful for your support. Please keep it coming.
His demeanor had shifted completely. He seemed nonchalant but was oddly ingratiating. He's probably afraid I'd get upset and stop the donations. XY is politics. I'll leave the rest to you. But with that, he made a hasty exit, leaving us all dumbfounded. The rest of us were just left in shock. Both the attending physician and the nurses had surprised looks on their faces due to the sudden change in the doctor's behavior.
Well then, Keith, you will be admitted for the night. Remember, managing one's health is part of a professional's job. Just be more cautious from now on.
I'm sorry. I'll be more careful. Rick, thank you so much for standing up to my father so firmly. First birthday, firmly resolved time. I was truly moved. Thank you, Sir Pike.
Keith exclaimed with joy. I felt somewhat embarrassed. Receiving praise head-on is something I never really got used to. Michelle chuckled as she watched my reaction.
Listen, Michelle, it's super late, and you might be fed up waiting. But if you're still single, I mustered up the courage to tell her that.
Before he could finish, Michelle interrupted. I am single. I haven't gotten married. I couldn't forget about you after you suddenly disappeared. The earnest look in her eyes left me speechless. After I had vanished, Michelle had confronted my father. She heard what had transpired, what my father had done, and felt devastated. But she laughed, saying she never thought she wouldn't see me again.
I always felt that our paths would cross again. I knew it in my heart.
Michelle said she had been looking forward to that day. The tears threatened to spill from my eyes. Thinking about her holding onto that tiny glimmer of hope every day after our separation made my heart ache.
I'll bring a much nicer ring next time.
As I said this, scratching my head,
I like that ring. You still have it, right?
the feeling like she saw right through me. I scratched my head and responded, "You got me?" Of course. I still have it. The ring that was returned to me as if to sever our ties.
I want that ring on my finger again.
I nodded firmly in response to Michelle's words. At that moment, the entire treatment room erupted into applause. Suddenly, I snapped back to reality. Wait, Michelle and I weren't alone. Feeling embarrassed, I hastily left the treatment room. A few days later, Michelle and I both went to meet the doctor. At first, the doctor refused to see us, but Michelle's tears eventually won him over. The head doctor's condition was to forget about the old words he said, which was amusing. It's probably about that comment he made about me being an uneducated trash.
I quickly replied, of course.
I wanted to register our marriage right away, but due to work, it kept getting postponed. The one who ran out of patience was Michelle, and unusually, she puffed up her cheeks, raising her voice in protest at me. She hardly ever gets angry. She hesitated a bit and then complained in a soft voice.
Please, don't keep me waiting any longer.
Seeing Michelle blushing and speaking shyly, I realized how long I'd kept her waiting.
But do it right away.
I stood up and left my work. I grabbed her hand and rushed to the county clerk's evening counter.
Michelle said, "Wait, but I had no intention of waiting any longer."
Her pace quickened, and by the time the county building was in sight, we were both running. We held our hands tightly. I swore in my heart I would never let go of this hand for the rest of my life.